I'm still in northern Peru on Route 3N, and not long after I left you last time, a welcome section of pavement opens up. Nice new asphalt, or pista as they call it in Peru, with big gorgeous curves. The weather's perfect, the air's crisp, and I drop down a long set of switchbacks, and as usual, as the route winds through a small town, I make a wrong turn. And then, this. I pull into that dirt alley on the left to turn around, and as I'm rolling backwards into the street, my rear wheel drops into a hole that's big enough to swallow the rear end of a motorcycle. The general reaction of the bystanders is pretty blasé. They've all seen worse. But after a minute or two, 4 or 5 people assemble to help me lift out my bike. Half an hour later, I come to Canyon del Pato, the centerpiece of today's ride. As you enter the canyon from the north, Route 3N starts out narrow and then turns into a single-lane road with two-way traffic. Horn honking and lights on high beam are really the only defensive measure against oncoming cars, buses, and trucks. I'm not sure why I feel the need to have my maps turned on. It's not as if there's a left turn coming up. Perhaps it's just comforting to know that there's a satellite or even two up there keeping an eye on me. What I don't realize at the time is that the canyon marks the end of what's been a few weeks of my mostly solitary immersion in Andean and indigenous culture that began with my time with Alonso and Julia in Salasaca, Ecuador. There were definitely some more cosmopolitan cities like Cuenca, Ecuador, and Cajamarca and Jaén in Peru. But for the most part, I've been in remote, high-altitude towns like Santiago de Chuco, Payasca, Molebamba, and Cabana, and the winding stretches of dirt road, trocha they call dirt roads in this part of South America, connecting them. People stare at me, a complete outsider, absurdly dressed like an astronaut or a Power Ranger. For some of them, there's surely suspicion mixed in with the curiosity, and fair enough. These are indigenous people with plenty of reason to be suspicious of outsiders. But I was also embraced. Like the day I rode into Molebamba, completely famished, and asked a man in the street if there was some place to get lunch. He was wearing a cap that said Canada, and I asked him if he'd been there, and he shook his head no and said, family. Something I hear a lot. He said it was a little early for lunch, but then he went into what I realized was a store, no sign, no windows. And when he came out, he said, go up to that house where the man is standing with the horse. They'll make you lunch. So I went and waited. Then a couple came walking up from the store with groceries and invited me in. There were a few tables, like it really was a restaurant, but there was no sign outside. Clearly everyone just knew. They made me a fried egg sandwich, and I swear at least half a gallon of fresh papaya juice. And they sat with me while I ate, and we told each other about our children, somehow with my limited Spanish, told each other about the things in our lives that mattered. We keep in touch on WhatsApp. Yesterday I sent them a picture of me standing in front of a mountain, and they wrote back saying I looked thin. Was I eating enough? And really, just the privilege of observing these lives in northern Peru as an outsider, sharing in their landscapes, their mountains, rivers, and skies, the one road in, the one road out, create in me their own profound connections. I get more anxious about meeting a truck as the tunnels get narrower, so I'm pleased to pick up a couple blockers. But one of them thinks the same thing, and I'm down to a single blocker. He too decides to fall in behind me, so again I'm leading the charge. And then I'm out. Route 3 is mostly paved now, but still there are vicuñas, a scrappy wild llama that live only at very high altitudes, and lots of llamas, thousands of llamas. And if you look closely enough, you'll see there's always a dog and a person keeping an eye out.